Welcome back to the Knowles Development Podcast. So good to be with you. And today's topic's kind of a fun one, but it's also a serious one. And it's all about finding the fun. You know, in every organization I've ever worked in, the work was real, right? Work is a 4-letter word, right? The work was real. There was real challenge. Real effort was required to be put in. If you tried to phone it in or put your feet up or anything like that, things fell off the rails pretty quickly. And especially in a team environment where everybody's got to be firing on all cylinders. So to me, there's a real importance to making sure that your people, the people that you're working to lead, enjoy working with you and working together. And to me, one of the great ways to do that is to find ways to have fun with people. Now, I am going to take maybe a different bent towards this than some of you might think, because I'm actually not the guy that does a lot of get out of work early on Fridays and let's go for a drink, or let's go and, or a lot of balloons or, axe throwing or stuff like that. To me, it's much more day to day, hour to hour, finding ways to enjoy what we're doing while we're doing it. And one of the things I know I've leaned on a lot is being vulnerable. Don't be shy about pointing out your own shortcomings and being able to make fun of it, right? Being able to just kind of poke fun at yourself a little bit, because it tends to let other people feel comfortable doing the same, especially when they've watched the leader do it. So if you're leading a group, it's okay, right, to joke about the fact that, you struggle with X, Y, or Z. So that's a nice entry point to actually being able to have fun together as a group. I'm not saying you need to make yourself the butt of every joke, okay? So let's be clear. However, some amount of vulnerability, some amount of poking fun at yourself can kind of take that edge off, especially if people feel a little intimidated around you. Number 2 is build time for it, right? If you know a meeting only needs to be 15 minutes, it's okay to set aside 20 or 30 to know that, hey, that leaves us some time for joking around, right? That gives us a little bit of time for some fun. And I'm telling you that those little moments really do end up being strong connection points. So I'll give you an example. Our staff at the office that I run for Keller Williams Realty, we have a little betting game that we do every single month about where we're going to end the month. And we're just guessing, right? We have our projecteds. We think we know roughly where the business is going to end the month at. But about a week before the end of the month, we start speculating. We have this whole betting process. And here's how it's become a fun thing. Every time we have a new member of the staff join, we spend all of this time talking about our degenerate gambling and all of the different rules that we've created for this betting. Now keep in mind, the big prize for the betting is they get to go to lunch with me. Now, if they want to, they can also just have me pay for lunch for them so they don't have to go for lunch with me, right? See how that's kind of an example of what we talked about at the beginning? Like, hey, I get it. I don't want to have lunch with me either, so I'll just pay for you to go have lunch. That's okay too. So even just something as simple as that, where we talk about it, there's a little build up to it, and then at the end of the month, we're all kind of like, okay, who's going to win? Who's not going to win? What's going to happen? Oh my gosh, I can't believe they won again. It becomes this fun little thing that helps pull you through what otherwise could be a really challenging time every single month. All the pressure of the end of the month and getting those last deals closed and all of that kind of stuff. So build time for it, make time for it. Get to know your people and let them get to know you. That's kind of item number 3. The best way to have some fun with somebody is to make sure you really get to know them. That's another thing to take time for. And for them to get to know you, you got to be willing to be a little vulnerable. So take the time to get to know your team, get to know your people, and make sure they really know you. Now, really, what's going to be a byproduct of that, if you're playing along at home, this would be like 3.2. The byproduct of that would be trust. See, there's certain kind of joking around and having fun that I'm not going to do with somebody unless there's a lot of trust, right? So, for example, if I'm working with somebody and we really trust each other, we can joke a lot and kind of give each other a hard time fairly frequently, and a lot of laughter can come from that, but it's only because there's a foundation of trust, a foundation of trust. If that's not there, I really can't even go there, and I shouldn't go there, because now they might misread it as I'm actually angry at them or I'm actually disappointed, when really what I was doing was just kind of playing up something and just going, oh, you failed me again, right? That only works if we're in a trusting relationship, right? And if they really genuinely know how much you value them, how much you care about them, and how you want to see them succeed. So keep that in mind, that the byproducts of that vulnerability and taking time to have some fun and getting to know your people and them getting to know you really is about building that trust factor. Be willing to throw out the agenda. Now, don't do it every day. Don't do it every week. Don't do it every month, right? But all of us remember a time where one of our favorite teachers kind of threw out the agenda for the class for the day and we went outside. Or we threw out the class agenda for the day and we instead heard, kind of some war stories about their early years, right? Great leaders are going to take the time to do that from time to time. And you've got to have a little sensitivity to when it's appropriate, when it's not. But there are times where you just, come on, we're having this conversation now. And just the willingness to be able to do that, the spontaneity of that from time to time is actually a great example of keeping people kind of on their toes, keeping it light, keeping it fun. There's a great example. I'm gonna take you back here for a minute, but hopefully most of you have seen this movie, The Princess Bride. There's a great example in the Princess Bride movie. And I was reminded of this recently because my kids are getting to an age where I'm rewatching some of the great films of my youth. And in that movie, there's a wonderful technique that is used that as moments get really wrapped up in tension, something happens. Do you remember what it is? It's when they cut away to the grandfather and the grandson back in the bedroom, and you're reminded that it's actually a grandfather reading a story to his sick grandchild. And it's an awkward question or this, that, or the other. And it's that technique that actually deflates the overall tension of the movie. That without that, some of those scenes are genuinely scary. People are getting killed with swords, and yet somehow this is a PG movie. Well, how is it? Because we take these moments to kind of de-escalate. It's a really powerful technique. Great, Brad. Can you apply that to my business somehow? I've got to finish this podcast. I'm happy to do it. The way that applies to you and your business is this. If you've got a staff meeting going on and people are beginning to have tensions build, use that moment, hit the pause button just like they do in The Princess Bride, and step out of the situation and use it as a learning moment, right? One of the things I love to do is reference back some of the lessons from Fierce Conversations, Susan Scott's great book. So as I see a couple of members of our staff getting tense about a topic, I like to pause them and go, ooh, let's stop. Everybody, can you see how this is a fierce conversation? Can you see how heat is really being generated? Can you see how this is a great clash of ideas without personal attacks? That this is actually what we're going for. And this is, I want to use it as an example. So it becomes this great learning moment, but there's an underlying technique there. It also diffuses the tension. It also helps to keep things lighter while really digging into the real issues and still getting progress done. So feel free to use something like that. Take those moments and find ways to diffuse them a little bit so that the overall tenor of the conversation is still light. It's still encouraging, right? Last thing I'm going to give you is this. Don't be afraid to spend some time finding your comedic voice. What do I mean by that? Well, there's all sorts of ways to kind of be funny or to get some levity going, right? Self-deprecating humor, love it. Sarcasm, love it. Dad jokes, right? There's nothing like a bad dad joke as long as it's clean in the work environment, right? That's a great way to kind of cut through stuff and get people laughing and having fun, right? So what is it for you? When are those moments for you that you really can pretty predictably put a smile on somebody else's face? If they're laughing, if they're smiling, they're not as stressed as they were the 2 or 3 minutes before then. You've helped to relieve some of that, and you've helped to create an environment where people really enjoy working. I promise you, if you're doing that as a leader, your people are going to stay with you longer. They're going to be more successful. They're going to be more excited about getting to work a little bit early or maybe even staying a little bit later, right? They like what they do, they like the people they do it with, and they're committed and they're having fun. Find the fun. That's what I'm going to tell you to do. Find it and have a blast doing it. Thanks so much, and we're going to see you soon. We'll see you on the next Knowles Development Podcast. Bye-bye.